5th Annual Leadership Summit, celebrating 75 years of partnership. Please welcome Anjali Kaur, the Deputy Assistant Administrator of the Bureau for Asia at USAID, who will introduce herself and the panelists.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. Excited to have you all here. Today I am the Deputy Assistant Administrator for USAID, covering South and Central Asia across the Asia Bureau. And as a result, I am so lucky to be able to work on these issues that affect not only India, but across the region as well. Before I introduce the panelists, I wanted to give a few remarks to be able to give you a sense of why we're here today and why this issue is so important. For all of you to come together today, it really highlights the importance on discussing women's economic advancement in India and the critical role of the private sector in these efforts. Special thanks to USISPF for hosting such an important discussion, and to our distinguished panelists, who I'm excited to learn from. I wanted to start by framing the issue of women's economic security in India, particularly in the context of this year's USISPF Leadership Summit theme on the role of public-private partnership in expanding inclusive growth and resilience in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Women's economic security and labor force participation are essential to advancing gender equity and equality. In fact, this area is highlighted as a key strategic priority in our 2021 National Strategy on Gender Equity and Equality. In India, as in countries around the world, including the United States, the COVID-19 pandemic has had particularly detrimental effects on women for a number of reasons, among them being a significant loss in economic security. Aligned with global trends, women who disproportionately work in less secure and less formalized jobs with fewer protections were more likely than men to lose jobs during the pandemic, and their recovery has been slower. As India seeks to recover from the effects of the pandemic, we are seeing a troubling data point: a failure to restore jobs for women, who have been less likely than men to return to the workforce. While declining rates of women in India's workforce were evident prior to 2020, COVID-19 rapidly accelerated this trend. In fact, Bloomberg reports that 90% of women in India are now shut out of the workforce. This is disastrous news for India's economy and also for individuals, families, and communities who are shut out of economic opportunities, which carry with them so many important benefits that last generations. Today, we'll be specifically focusing on the critical role of the US-India Alliance for Women's Economic Empowerment to promote women's economic advancement in India, particularly in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. USAID is pleased to be a core partner in this alliance. As a brief background, the US-India Alliance for Women's Economic Empowerment is a partnership between the United States government, the private sector, and academia. Core partners include the State Department, USAID, USISPF, and George Washington University. The goal of the alliance is to catalyze transformational commitment to foster women's economic advancement, equity, and inclusion in India. With that in mind, focus areas include accelerating women's entrepreneurship, fostering leadership in the workforce, and providing access to career-enhancing education and skills-building opportunities. The key to the alliance are our members, who are pivotal to achieving these goals. The alliance thrives on its membership, who brings a diverse set of knowledge, skills, and resources to the table, which can then be jointly leveraged in partnership to create transformational change. Through accelerating corporate and philanthropic investment, in-kind support, and co-creation with the private sector, the alliance seeks to fundamentally transform the landscape for women and girls in India, enabling them to play a meaningful role in India's growth and development. As a member of the Alliance's executive committee, I want to emphasize the potential for significant impact the Alliance has in India, particularly in light of the urgency of these efforts. I'm very much looking forward to learning more from our panelists, who are each members of the Alliance. And so now let me go ahead and introduce the panelists for today's session. First, we have Radhika Shah, who's an angel and impact investor from Silicon Valley and co-president at Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, a community of about 1,200 entrepreneurial Stanford students, faculty members, and alumni. She's passionate about leveraging technology for social good and has been active in civic engagement and social causes since her early childhood. Next, we have Elizabeth A. Vasquez, who's the CEO and co-founder of WeConnect, International, a global network that connects women-owned businesses to qualified buyers around the world. She's a world leader in women's economic empowerment and global supplier diversity and inclusion. And lastly, we have Dr. Jo Weber, who's a serial software entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Pod, the social networking platform that puts people on the map, helping them connect based on common interest and location. Jo is also currently the board chairman for Edleo and serves on a nonprofit board. So the Alliance provides truly a structure for disparate organizations to come together, catalyze investment and collaboration to advance women's economic empowerment in India, as we're seeing by those who have gathered today. And so let me first start off with our first question, and this is to all of our panelists. India's female labor force dropped significantly between 2010 to 2020. To get us started, can you introduce your organization and how you intend to work with the Alliance to foster women-led job creation or economic growth? And first, we'll start with Radhika, then Elizabeth, and then Dr. Jo Weber. Please.
Thank you, Anjali. Good morning from California. At Stanford, as an entrepreneur, we look to bring the power of inclusive, diverse entrepreneurship and community, and to leverage the power of technology innovation to bring positive change in our Stanford community and society overall. I'm also a senior advisor to the recently launched Global Center for Gender Equality at Stanford University, which brings together rich experience from academics, researchers, field practitioners, and analysts with deep gender expertise across a range of sectors, including gender mainstreaming, economics, agriculture, education, health systems and financing, private sector, and policy. Having grown up in the backdrop of the Gandhi ashram in India, I am a deep believer in the Gandhian philosophy of respecting the dignity of each and every human being and thinking of a relationship to nature as that of a custodian. To me, the Sustainable Development Goals help us scale that spirit globally. And I'm also an advisor to the Sustainable Development Goals philanthropy platform operated by UNDP and WINGS, launched in 8 countries, including India. And India, the focus of the platform has been around gender, skilling, livelihood for women. And I'm very, very excited about that podium for a global role. As an honorary friend of the US-India Alliance for Women's Economic Empowerment, I am very excited and honored to share that I will be chairing a working group organized around the principle of accelerating women in STEM in India, being launched under the auspices of the US-India Alliance for Women's Economic Empowerment. This group will include participation from leaders and change makers from across civil society, the private sector, both investors, corporates, philanthropy, academia, and governments. We will take a cross-sectoral, cross-nation building approach to identify innovative solutions and policy measures to accelerate women in STEM. The working group will be a neutral convening body that will most likely be housed at USISPF and will aim to identify barriers and opportunities in order to catalyze action, inform relevant policy, and enable knowledge sharing across the 2 countries. Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you so much, Radhika. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Radhika and Angela. This is such an exciting conversation. I'm so grateful to be a member of the Alliance. We Connect International, I think, is uniquely positioned to work with the various stakeholders that the Alliance is meant to serve. We were founded by corporations that want to buy more products and services from women-owned businesses. And the women business owners, both in India and in the United States, are simply outstanding. They are in every industry sector. They represent every size of business, and they want to win contracts. And so working with the partners of the Alliance based both in India and in the United States, we're looking forward to ensuring that everyone has visibility into these businesses that are owned by women and the way that these women grow these businesses to create jobs for everyone. But then when they receive that revenue from these new contracts, the way they reinvest it back into their companies in a way that's good for people on the planet, but also the way they care for their families and their communities, has a very powerful multiplier effect that I think is directly in line with the mission of the Alliance. So thrilled to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Over to you, Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Webber, and I want to let you know that I am sitting here dealing with the very thing that is causing a big part of this problem. So I've got COVID right now. I think, unfortunately, there's just a wave going through, which is, despite having all the vaccinations and the boosters, and you're wearing a mask, it is incredibly contagious. It's more contagious than measles, the current Omicron BA.5 variant. But anyway, I'm the CEO of Pod, and we have a group inside us called STEM Connector. And for the last 11 years, we've been working to really promote STEM, encouraging women, children, and minorities to go into STEM careers in particular. We have a movement called Million Women Mentors. And I think one of the things you're going to see is the diaspora of India. And so many people in the United States originally came from India, and they want to give back, they want to help. And we're working with the Alliance to put in place a technology platform to help the people who want to help and want to provide mentoring, to connect those people to the women and girls in India who really could do with a mentor. Because, you know, a mentor is really somebody that tends to see more about in you in terms of what you can do and can actually help you get there. And I think that can really help. The numbers are astounding. 90% of Indian women right now are not in the workforce. The US, we saw a plummet with COVID. You know, it's caused problems all over, but not as astounding as what we're seeing in India right now.
Thank you, Joe. And we greatly appreciate the fact that even with COVID, you are here with us. And we hope for a speedy recovery and hope the symptoms are not too severe.
Thank you.
We're actually going to go back to you with, start with you for our next question, as you just started to touch upon it. But what makes a model like the Alliance attractive for working in a market like India? We'll go first to Joe, and then back to Elizabeth, and then to Radhika.
I think the thing with the Alliance is I love that it's bringing together so many people who care about this topic and care about women and helping women advance themselves and making things more equitable. And I think one person can't do this, or one company can't do this. So I think the Alliance, with its broad participation, can bring many of us from all over the world, men and women who really care about this and are passionate about this, bring us together with our disparate skill sets to really make this a successful, and we will be successful with this. It's the right thing to do. And I feel the timing is right now. I feel the world needs this, particularly my area. Obviously, I know my area better than others. But when you look at STEM, there is a shortage of STEM talent globally. There's zero unemployment in cybersecurity. We can't find enough people in cybersecurity. So you've got a situation where you've got, as I said, 90% of India's women are not working. You've got this massive able body of people, and you've also got this deficit of jobs and careers that we need people to do these jobs. So I think the timing is good, and I think the Alliance does a great job of bringing together these disparate skills and putting us together in a forum where we can actually affect change.
Thanks, Joe. And it's true, this can't be just done by individuals alone. And so the Alliance is a great umbrella to be able to bring that together. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I agree with Joe that there is not just a huge opportunity, but there's urgency. I mean, with everything that's happening right now in the world, with concerns around recessions and energy and food security and general security, now is the time to ensure that we don't let half the population sit on the sidelines. Like, we cannot afford that. Not in India, not in the United States, not in any country. And in India, you have millions of women who are entrepreneurial and who are just fearless in both their passion and their ability to take their skills and create jobs for others, and to compete as entrepreneurs and to deliver solutions that are desperately needed both inside and outside of India. And I mean, we have women-owned businesses, for example, Gift Links. She provides corporate gifts and other solutions to many of the corporations we work with. And these corporations, most of them are US corporations, but some are Indian corporations in other countries. And they have over $1 trillion in annual purchasing power. And 1% of that purchasing power goes to women-owned businesses. But this company, Gift Links, when she wins a contract with a corporation to provide corporate gifts, she's hiring local women artisans who create these beautiful corporate gifts that can be personalized. But that money flows directly into the hands of those women who in turn can, build their businesses and feed their families and put their kids into school and make sure that they're ready to have good jobs or businesses of their own. And so there is real urgency to make sure that we all do a better job of leveraging our purchasing power, because we're going to buy stuff anyway. But let's make sure that when we do it, that it actually has the impacts on people on the planet that we all desperately want and need. And that's what I think the Alliance can help to create, is that enabling environment.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That's a great point and a really good example as well to create that environment. Over to you, Radhika.
Yeah, in this unique moment, the pandemic has made India and the world race into the digital age. How do we ensure no woman is left behind in this race to digital innovation while paying digital livelihoods, digital health access, and more? How do we avoid yet another type of divide in our world, the rapidly growing digital gender divide? The work of the Alliance focused on livelihood and economic empowerment of women could not be more timely. At the new working group, we hope to identify barriers and opportunities to advancing women in STEM. Digital livelihoods for women can lead to self-reliance, being better informed, and a dignified life. What better place than the land of Mahatma Gandhi to accelerate this much-needed change in our world, a change already deeply enshrined in the Gandhian philosophy of respecting the dignity of each human being and grounded in economic self-reliance. A change that is a key spirit of the UN SDGs of leaving no one behind. Women role models and leaders from India and the US, especially diaspora and local leaders, can play a critical role and be central to bringing this holistic inclusion of women in STEM, not just for livelihoods, but also in the echelons of STEM power. Having women in key roles will be critical. And this will be important for the digital transition. The key pillars we'll be focusing on in this working group include catalyzing and nurturing investment in women, identifying opportunities and constraints for investing in women-led and co-founded tech startups, catalyzing resources, mentoring, networking for such startups, fostering corporate efforts, advancing women in STEM, CSR, and more, corporate supporting STEM education, STEM vocational skills, and STEM careers and top leadership, catalyzing US-India higher education cooperation, advancing women in STEM, building bridges between key academic institutions across the two nations, including on technology, engineering, math, and science, including the voice of philanthropy and civic society. Civil society and market-oriented as well as non-market-oriented NGOs will be key and can help balance the private sector's business perspective, complement in building foundational ecosystem nurturing and systems change needed to accelerate women in STEM. And finally, portraying and advancing women in science and tech. Identifying successful role models is going to be critical. Ways of interesting young girls in science and tech, providing access to science knowledge, access to tools, digital literacy skills, and linking these to the girls' lived experience, taking a no girls left behind approach.
Great, thank you, Radhika. That's very comprehensive, and we're excited to see this working group move forward. Now, in this next section, I'm going to ask each of you individual questions. And the first question goes to Elizabeth. In so many ways, the pandemic has upended global supply chains, causing corporations and governments the world over to examine supply chain independence, as well as steps to make supply chain more competitive. So to what extent is this introspection regarding supply chain a moment we should galvanize to discuss the value of inclusive supply chains to fostering competitiveness? Are there unique barriers emerging in this area of work? Elizabeth, over to you.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing because for decades, the whole focus of large buyers, whether it was governments or multilaterals or corporations, was supply chain consolidation. They wanted fewer suppliers who in turn would hire other suppliers, but that created dependencies that they thought they were saving money and effort, and in some ways they were, but then COVID hit. And Joe can speak to this firsthand, like it's a personal effect, but it's also a ripple effect across how stuff moves, our products and our services. And we suddenly realized that if you're dependent on one supplier and that supplier is unable to get their stuff out of their facilities into your offices or your retail space or into your home, you're in trouble. Like, that's a problem. And so it forced all of us to rethink how we spend our money. And are we being inclusive in that purchasing power? And are we looking for local suppliers who can give us what we need without having to worry about whether or not a ship is going to be able to move from one port to another, and then the cost of that. Having said that, I think there are still really powerful reasons to want to promote trade opportunities, because there are things that the women in India are uniquely qualified and talented to do, and there are things that women in the United States are uniquely qualified and able to do. And so you do want to take advantage of those unique skill sets and trade literally for what one does that is better than the other, to everyone's finding ways to create that interdependency in a way that is healthy and that creates jobs, because these women have stronger companies. So I do feel like there's a lot of lessons learned about how to be smarter about how we build our value chains and how we ensure that we have access to all of the best suppliers, not just one supplier in one country, but all of the small and medium enterprises that we didn't even know existed that could add value to our supply chain. So this is definitely an opportunity. And as everyone has mentioned, technology is making all of this so much easier to actually do than it was in the past.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's super helpful. And as you said, it's a good transition to Joe. Joe, can you share more about how POD is leveraging technology to foster women's networks and capacity building?
Sure, and I could listen to Elizabeth for a lot longer on that. I think she's spot on there. Very, massive disruption to the supply chain has happened, and we really need to rethink how we move things around, how we connect with people and companies. But anyway, onto my question. So with POD, we have a technology platform, and it basically allows people to find other people and people to find jobs and internships and other career opportunities. So we believe it's something like, even in the United States, it's something like 70% of jobs are passed down through networks. And it tends to be people who are already in the workforce, hey, can you give my son a summer internship? That's how it starts. So it leaves out a lot of people who are not already in that network. And we believe if we can make jobs, internships, and mentorships more visible and applicable to people, it's going to increase the availability of opportunity. Now, when we started working with the Alliance, working with Radhika, she was like, well, okay, we can put jobs on the map, we can put internships on the map. Let's put mentorships on the map, which seems like is a brilliant idea and simple idea, but yes, in the same way. So what we have is we have a number of companies that are volunteering mentorships, in terms of it's individuals within the company who would like to give back, and they'd like to help somebody in India, a woman in India, a girl in India, come further along in her career, or help them find a way to pursue a career in STEM. Because if you don't know it exists, you're never going to get that job. So the idea is these mentors can create a little profile about themselves, and then they can put themselves out there and say, hey, I'm willing to, I've got a specialty in, say, organic chemistry. I am willing to mentor people who are interested in this. The following careers and opportunities are available to somebody with this kind of qualification. And, I'm willing to mentor up to 5 people kind of thing. Then that goes into, on the map, goes into a very visible area where we then work with women servant organizations across India to let women know, hey, and girls know, hey, go onto the map, see if you can find a mentor that, you think is a good match for you. So in this way, it allows people in the United States and other Western countries who are originally from India or just care about mentoring women to put themselves out there and say, hey, I'm willing to do this. And it allows them to connect with the women and girls in India who really need some help, really can do with, some help figuring out career-wise, the opportunities, what they can do. So not designed to pull them out of India, but really designed to attach them to a mentor that has gone through what they're going through and can help them understand some of the opportunities and how to access those opportunities.
I love that idea, Joe. And we've all seen, whether we've been mentored ourselves, seen other people we know have been mentored, what a change it makes, both as a guiding force, inspirationally, motivationally, but also strategically. So those are great points. Thank you again. And now, Radhika, jobs in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are often the most lucrative, and yet we know that despite a high number of Indian women who study STEM, there's a significantly lower number who actually pursue STEM careers. So what accounts for this drop-off from those who study STEM and those who continue to work in STEM? And how can companies and philanthropic organizations broach these challenges? How are you working to do so through the Alliance?
Significant barriers exist that prevent women from pursuing STEM careers. These exist not just in India, but also my world of Silicon Valley and in different forms and shapes around the world. If we don't identify and tackle them rapidly, the new digital gender divide might become way too wide to bridge. While some of these barriers are more tangible, such as lack of access to vocational digital skills training, differences in access to job, differences in women's pay, others are more subtle, such as societal norms creating explicit and implicit biases in people's minds about women in STEM careers. Some of these biases start impacting girls, their self-identity, and society's identity about them, even around adolescence. In my own world of Silicon Valley, many young girls in their teens who are good at math start losing interest in math as the peer circle and societal norms make them feel that it is uncool for girls to be in math. Growing up in India as an adolescent who loved math, I never experienced this specific kind of bias. However, I face other gender biases. I was admitted as one of the only 22 merit-based seats for computer science in the state of Gujarat, the only girl with 21 boys. My family was proud, and yet one of my professors criticized me for destroying the boys' livelihood by wasting a seat, as I was anyway just going to get married. In his mind, clearly STEM careers were not for women. While this has changed significantly, and in urban regions, there's so many women now who study STEM, some of this mindset still persists. Successful women leaders from STEM could be great role models to help tackle some of these gender identity and bias issues. In rural India and other parts of the world that are rural, barriers also exist in access to STEM education, the internet, digital devices, digital literacy. Such access early on is critical to help young girls get interested and later join STEM careers. Sharing my own childhood experience again, when my scientist father gave me a microscope before my first doll, it started a love for science and tech, which brought me to Stanford to study computer science and work in the tech world. The working group will be looking at early STEM education as well and how it can create later STEM livelihood options for young girls. Where may barriers and opportunities lie? Can we bring together some of the brilliant tech minds from places like Silicon Valley to join forces with those from India to advance this area, especially women leaders? It is going to be critical to bring women front and center on this change and this transition. One such model is Internet Sati in India, which empowers young rural women to become the change agents in their villages. These women now teach internet usage and digital literacy to their family and fellow villagers, thus rapidly shifting gender norms in the community. In the working group, we hope to study such models of grassroots women-led change that provide STEM livelihood, and how can they be scaled nationally, and explore if there could be new policy measures to help accelerate this kind of change. And we also hope to share learnings across the two countries.
Thank you, Radhika. Imagine if your professor, your teacher in Gujarat could see you now. So that wraps up the formal question session. I would now actually like to turn to each of you for your final thoughts before we close. So why don't we start with you, Radhika? Any final thoughts that you'd like to add?
I'm an optimist, and while the situation is dire for women in this pandemic, I think it is also a huge opportunity. If we kind of seize the moment collectively, none of us can do this alone. And if we can recognize that it is not just us from Silicon Valley or the women leaders in tech, it is all of us together, the collective change we can bring from that young woman in rural India to us together, join forces, build bridges. Nothing is impossible. I'm an optimist that we can make this happen, where every woman can have the power of digital technology and be part of this transformation and transition.
I love the optimism. I think we're all on this panel and in this conversation, listening to this conversation, feeling the same way with that same energy. Over to you, Elizabeth. Final thoughts.
Thank you. And thank you to USAID. Thank you to State, Radhika's, your leadership, to what, Joe, you're doing. I mean, I love Radhika's leadership to create the alliance, to make sure that we all have an opportunity to not only contribute what we're doing, but also leverage what everyone else is doing. And I sincerely hope that anyone who's participating in these conversations, if you're thinking about how can you join the Alliance, how can you support the work of the Alliance, how can you help ensure that the women in India and in the United States have an equal opportunity to reach their full potential and help everyone around them reach their full potential, leverage your purchasing power. This doesn't have to be super complicated. We don't have to wait around for governments or corporations to do things. All of us have purchasing power as individual consumers, but also within our organizations. But then there's sort of the bigger picture, the strategy, and how to use all these various platforms for impact at scale. And so I would just encourage everyone to not just listen, but then to actually make a commitment right now to one thing that you're going to do in the next 24 hours that will lead to impact. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And over to you, Joe.
No, I love it. I don't think I can add on what those, Radhika and Elizabeth have said there. I think, the time is now, the timing's good. I do feel this generation, listening to Radhika's story, and maybe it's not true all over the world, but certainly in the United States, in the UK, it feels to me the generation coming through. I have a couple of children in the generation Z coming through. It does feel to me that they are not bound by some of the old kind of ideas that we grew up with, that men's place was in the workforce and women were there to support men. It feels like younger people are not restricted by that thought. It doesn't see, it's particularly in as I say, in the United States and in the UK, it doesn't feel like they're bound by those same constraints of the mind that we grew up with. So I do feel the timing is great. I think Elizabeth's right. Take action, right? Radhika's doing a fabulous job here. I'm sure she would love to have more companies offering mentorships, right? And so if you're out there with a company, maybe talk to your company about being part of this and, offering these mentorships, because the mentorships will change lives. And any of us that have been around mentoring, had a mentor or been a mentor, it's probably one of the biggest things that you can do as an individual. It costs you nothing, but it can just make a tremendous impact on people's lives. So I'd certainly encourage anybody listening to really consider being a mentor. And if you're part of a corporation, maybe see if you can persuade your company to get involved with the Alliance and help provide this blanket of mentors, which can help uplift this next generation.
Thank you to each of you. I really thank everyone in the audience and each of our expert panelists. And as they've so well articulated, take action today. As Elizabeth said, make sure within the next 24 hours, think about the action that you can take today that will have an impact. Each of us have the ability, whether it's through purchasing power, whether through mentorship, as Joe has highlighted, to be able to create a change and see stories like that of Radhika's actually change the lives of generations, of communities, of the thinking, of the mindset. And so USISPF will follow up after the program to be able to give you information on how you can join the Alliance. And we look forward to all of your impact that you will soon create. So thank you once again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Our next session will begin momentarily. Please refer to your registration confirmation email for the link. That concludes our session for today.